So aerobic exercise is any physical activity that is enough to increase the heart rate and the body's need for oxygen. It's well known to have many general health benefits, such as improvements in cardiovascular health, reduction in osteoporosis and fractures, and improvements in overall well-being. And then at a cellular level, physical exercise increases the body's energy production. It reduces inflammation, promotes development of new blood vessels, and reduces the buildup of toxic chemicals. And then it also stimulates the formation of synapses, which are the places where brain cells called neurons connect and communicate with each other. And the loss of dopamine neurons in the region of the brain that helps control movement, known as the substantia nigra, is responsible for most of the motor problems we see in Parkinson's. Small molecules called neurotrophic factors are produced by our cells and are responsible for the growth of nervous tissue. They're shown to be significantly reduced in the substantia nigra of patients with Parkinson's, as Jamil mentioned earlier, where a Japanese group reported that vigorous exercise in Parkinsonian animal models activated growth factor expression. So its activity is thought to mediate neuroprotection. And other exercise effects showed that enhancement of cells that change from one cell type to another, such as to a brain cell, as well as increased growth factor expressions, all promote the reversal of age-related decline in the growth of blood vessels in the substantia nigra. And many studies have used forced treadmill training versus voluntary running wheels on rodents to simulate physical activity, and neurotoxins are used to model organisms of Parkinson's, as the toxins leads to the destruction of dopamine cells in the rodent brain. And a review of published PD animal studies showed that the appropriate duration and the intensity of the exercise had significant reductions in the toxin-induced lesions of the dopamine system. And building on from animal studies, research was then done to look at the effects of exercise in humans. So firstly, blood analysis was looked at in participants who had undergone various moderate to intense exercise programs, and there was increased BDNF in their blood, which is one of the types of small molecules, and that has a role in the growth of nervous tissue. And it's also known to cross the blood-brain barrier too. So combinations of increased blood flow and then reduction in inflammation and increased cell signaling are all thought to contribute to neuroplasticity, and that is the ability for our neural networks in the brain to change over time through growth and reorganization, and then have downstream clinical effects and benefits. There was also an epidemiological study by the US Cancer Institute's Diet and Health cohort, and that recorded over 200,000 participants' physical activity levels, and they were categorized into either light or moderate to vigorous intensity. And it was shown that in the vigorous group, there was a decreased risk of 40% of Parkinson's, and there were no significant reductions were found in the light intensity category. And a recently published literature review of Parkinson's exercise trials identified 51 randomized controlled trials, which is an increase of over 30 new trials in the last 10 years. So the field is really growing, and it's reported that there's strong evidence that exercise is beneficial, it's feasible, and a low-risk intervention, and can improve motor and non-motor scores in people with Parkinson's. So I'll just briefly summarise 3 trials I'm going to focus on. These are all on people with Parkinson's. The first one is the PD Sparks trial, and that was done by a group in Colorado, and that investigated the feasibility and safety of a high-intensity treadmill exercise on motor symptoms, and they randomised just under 130 PD patients into 3 groups. And these were high intensity, moderate intensity, and usual care. And the usual care was the control group, so that was no exercise. And the UPDRS, which is the most widely used rating instrument in Parkinson's, assesses the motor and non-motor symptoms, and these were performed before and after the study. The results found that at the end of the 6-month intervention, the high-intensity exercise group showed insignificant changes in UPDRS scores. However, the moderate intensity in the control group showed significant declines in the motor scores. So you can see that the box plot here is a 6-month change in the UPDRS scores, where the positive change indicates a worsening of the motor symptoms. And then the other trial is a Park-InShape trial done in the Netherlands, and that was the first feasibility trial that aimed to test adherence in a remote home-based setting using virtual reality gamified bikes. 130 PD patients were recruited to the either aerobic exercise group or the active control stretching group, and the study lasted 6 months and required 3 sessions a week for 30 to 45 minutes. The participants needed to stay at their prescribed target heart rate. And motor and non-motor tests were performed at the baseline and then at the end of the trial, and it was found that adherence and compliance to the program was excellent, and then also, again, a stabilisation of UPDRS scores was reported. A sub-study of the trial also included people from both groups to have brain imaging scans at baseline and at the end of the study, and the findings from the aerobic exercise group, but not the control group, showed increased functional connectivity in areas of the brain associated with the substantia nigra. This was also seen in areas of the brain involved in cognition and problem solving. And brain atrophy is a primary hallmark of Parkinson's and is associated with progression of motor and cognitive symptoms we see. So they analysed the brain images and were able to quantify changes in brain matter, changes in percentage-based volume of brain matter, and then there's a decrease in the matter when comparing the stretching control group there. So they concluded that MRI, clinical and behavioural results showed that aerobic exercise stabilised disease progression and enhanced cognitive performance. And then the last study I'm just going to quickly summarise was the Oxford Brookes community trial, and that lasted for 6 months. And they looked at the effects of self-managed community exercise programs for people with Parkinson's, and they wanted to evaluate the safety and compliance to a minimally supported community exercise intervention. Around 100 participants were recruited to the study and allocated to either intervention or control, and this was 2 sessions for an hour, once a week for 6 months. And the exercise group took place in community leisure centres and was supported by minimal supervision by a clinical professional in clinical exercise, and it was delivered through a booklet consisted of 30 minutes aerobic training, and their target heart rate was followed as well. And then the control group had an active stretching exercise where they did handwriting tasks and handwriting exercises as well. And then the results showed that there were improvements in mobility and motor symptoms sustained for more than a year after follow-up as well, so not just in the 6 months, they did a year follow-up, and it was reported that most of the participants were engaged with the exercise program. So the group summarised that we could be informed that attending a leisure centre to undertake similar exercise programs carries minimal risks, and it may improve or maintain motor symptoms. And although the control group didn't actually have the aerobic intervention, there were increased writing amplitude, encouraging effects, so that led to improvements for them in their handwriting. So I'm now just going to talk a bit about how we can apply the findings from these Parkinson's trials into at-risk individuals. We've explained earlier what RBD is, but I'll just quickly summarise. So REM sleep behaviour disorder is also known as RBD. It's a sleep condition caused by the loss of muscle paralysis during REM sleep phase, and that can result in people acting out their dreams and injuring themselves and their bed partner. And a large international multi-centre study of nearly 1,300 participants with RBD found that over 70% of people with RBD developed Parkinson's or related disorder within 12 years of diagnosis. So this shows that underlying changes in the brain takes place many years before symptoms of Parkinson's develop. So it's now sort of hypothesised that aerobic exercise during the prodromal period may alter conversion to full manifestation of Parkinson's, and the aerobic exercise undertaken can act as a disease modifier to slow progression or even halt it. So we've wanted to drive this initiative forward and to sort of begin making a plan to do some exercise trials in people with RBD. So we held our first patient public involvement group to discuss moving forward, and the online sessions involved polling exercise habits and preferences for the potential study design. You can see here on the top left that there was no preference for the type of study when we presented the 3 I just did, or a hybrid of them. And there was a preference for a mixture of at home and outside, or a mixture of at the gym or outside for their preference for how they would exercise. So we also asked the group what would help you do more exercise, and free personal training sessions, better understanding of the health benefits and pain management were some of the things selected. The They also could enter in their own reasons for what would help them motivate them to do more exercise. And things like motivation, gym membership, fixed classes and company were some of the things that they decided. So we really want to drive the initiative forward, and using the initial feedback we got from the PPI group, we began to formulate a study design. And we would first like to collect some pilot data, and this would involve some volunteers to complete the study and follow the trial design before a shorter period of time, as this will help us confirm the design of a later feasibility study to measure compliancy levels and an aerobic exercise program in our RBD group. And although there is strong evidence that there is high compliancy and feasibility in the PD population, our RBD population is younger, so there may be other things that may affect compliancy, such as time if they're still working. So the study design will be modelled off the 3 trials that I mentioned earlier, following a 30 to 45-minute exercise program of unspecified aerobic activity, as long as your heart rate is up to the prescribed level, 30 minutes 3 times a week, and you'll be given chest straps and watches to take home, and these monitor your heart rate during the exercise and to keep track of your activity level targets. And so one of the ways to increase motivation also is to choose you're able to choose what aerobic activity you'd like to do, and this will also include access to gyms, supervised gym sessions and collaborations with physiotherapists, and there's also going to be compliancy calls throughout this trial as well. And we'd like to monitor motor and non-motor assessments before and after the intervention. So the overall study outcomes will assess compliancy and the feasibility of the exercise program. So the results from the feasibility trial will allow us to take this to the next stage, and will form the basis of an even larger scale aerobic trial. And to open up at sites all over the country, we could also look at longer intervention periods and longer follow-up to see whether there were delays or even halting progression to Parkinson's for this at-risk group. And validating this exercise program will allow better recommendations during NHS sleep clinics, and positive research results can allow more resources to include referrals to physiotherapy and even funded at-home equipment such as heart rate monitors or heart rate watches after seeing a sleep clinician and having a diagnosis of RBD, and also giving out the exercise program as part of standard care, for example. And currently, the clinicians do recommend exercise as part of, when you're given an RBD diagnosis, but these studies will allow us to have validated evidence to be able to give programs, and allows for clinicians to give accurate and more tailored advice to the RBD patients when they're first diagnosed. So the next step for us is to collect pilot data, so if anyone's interested in this, and also if you'd like to join the patient public involvement groups as well, there's also a space for that. So I'll hand over to Helen, who's going to talk about the treadmill training in Parkinson's.
So a lot of my patients come and meet me and they tell me they've got problems with their walking, and in particular with slowness of walking. That's probably one of the most common reasons we get referrals. And there's all sorts of things. We'll probably tell you to exercise, we'll probably tell you to walk more. But over the last 10 years in physiotherapy, treadmill training has come out as a real option. And what we mean by treadmill training is getting on a treadmill regularly, walking at different speeds to try and improve your walking pattern. And the evidence has been getting stronger and stronger, but if I'm honest, it's always been a little bit unrealistic of an NHS provision. It's normally done in a laboratory, it's normally done 5 times a week, it's normally done for 45 minutes, and I'm afraid that's just not something our little service could offer. So we thought, less moaning, more action. How can we pragmatically apply this? So what we did is we ran a little pilot study. So what we did is we collected patients who were experiencing that slowness of walking, so in the early stages of Parkinson's, and we checked out their walking speed by doing a very simple walking test. This gave us at their normal walking speed. And from that, we calculated 3 different speeds, a slow, a normal, and a fast. And we popped them on a treadmill for 5 lots of 5-minute intervals at different speeds. They came every week for 6 weeks, and we just used the local community gyms, the ones down the road from our patients' houses, okay? And this was largely done with support of our physiotherapy assistants, okay? And after 3 months, we thought we'd follow it up. So we've only done this in Oxford City, but the results were a little bit even better than we thought they might be. So we had 15 patients in total. Their stage, they were in the early stages, as matched the bigger research, average age. Number of sessions, 5. We didn't quite make 6 due to some rather lovely holidays that people took. We did their pre-10 metre walk test, 1.21. That's pretty, it's not too bad, but it's beginning to get a bit slow. And afterwards, we repeated the same test, and it had gone up. It had gone up by 0.13. That doesn't really matter to anyone in real life, but what that actually correlates with is if you get a gait speed of 0.13 change, generally a patient experiences a functional change. So as soon as you hit more than 0.13, your patient's going, this works, okay? So it was a really promising start. Also, a few unexpected results. Some of our patients did have falls, and actually they came back going, I'm not falling over as much. Bonus. There's also ongoing gym exercise adherence. At 3 months, we're calling these people and they're still going to the gym. And that is music to my ears, because that's my whole goal, is to try and get people to take up long-term exercise. And for those of you that met me, you know I can go on about it. The other thing was peer support. It's a very useful way of us to see lots of people. We will see people back to back in the gym. And people got to know each other. And turns out they quite liked each other, because you can have quite a nice chit-chat whilst you're on the treadmill. And they're still going. So that we've got 2 lovely ladies that meet at the gym and go do their treadmill training together. It's fabulous. And the last thing that properly warmed my heart more than anything was the patient enthusiasm. I'm not going to embarrass my colleague by some of the thank you letters she got, but there's some absolute joy that people found by doing it. Really enjoyable form of exercise and really rewarding. So based on those results, we thought we can't just do this in Oxford City. We're a county-wide service. We'll do a county-wide rollout. And we very kindly got given some money for the next 12 months. So until next September, we're county-wide. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a few more outcome measures. We're going to start measuring people's balance as well, as people start saying their falls reduced. So what's happening there? We're also going to do a quality of life measure. It's less dull than it sounds, I promise. We've also got some funding, because some of our patients couldn't afford to get to the gym. So for those who are on housing benefit, temporary housing, we do have a small pot of cash that we can use to help people join in. And we're going to do a 3-month and a 6-month follow-up. We have some additional options. I can't promise you this will come to fruition. I've got aspirations. We have access to a treadmill that does have a harness over the top of it, so if someone's a bit wobbly, it just keeps everybody safe. And we've also started dabbling with using some inclines. The research is less solid around that, but we can try it. So for the next year, these are your criteria. You have to have Parkinson's disease. I'm afraid it doesn't include atypical Parkinson's. You have to be independently mobile indoors, no aids, no holding onto the furniture, because we're asking you to exercise for 25 minutes on a treadmill. You have to be able to undertake cardiovascular exercise. We do get your heart rate up, okay? We will go through a screening questionnaire with you, and if there's any problems, we will unpick that with you, yourself and your GP. And you need to be able to follow verbal instructions. This work has been done in people with cognitive impairment, and it works really well, mild, moderate cognitive impairment. You just need to be able to follow our very clear and joyful instructions and enthusiasm. So there's 3 of us. We wouldn't call ourselves a massive deployment of treadmill staff. I'm going to be covering the west and the north, Whitney and Banbury. Shireen, who's sitting up the back there, who can field lots of questions because she's done a huge amount of this work, she's covering the city, and our lovely colleague Beth is in the south. So they're the faces you'll meet. If you want to take part, excellent. I'm sort of on a bit of a recruitment drive here. You can self-refer, ideally via email, please, just for my admin. Otherwise, there is my phone number if you do need it. That's a QR code to our website. Everything's on there. Let us know your name, address, all the normal stuff. We'll email you a questionnaire. Okay, please send that back to us. I'm then going to call you up and we're going to have a chat to unpick some of those questions that you've answered. And then going from there, hopefully we'll see you on a treadmill. Okay? Lovely. Thank you very much.